Welcome to the Franz van Kat debate. El Comandante is dead.
It's so sad. He was our king, our greatest leader, a great man of the revolution.
Things will never be as they were before.
And Hugo Chavez would proudly say that his job was also to kick sand into the eyes of Uncle Sam. The self-proclaimed 21st century socialist was determined to curb American influence in the region, cozying up to Cuba's Fidel Castro while encouraging fellow Latin American countries to turn their backs on Washington. He was a man who always enjoyed broad support among his country's poor, but he was also a leader who jailed his opponents, sponsored terrorists, and left behind a country plagued with food shortages. However, one thing's for sure, Chavez changed the way Venezuelans see themselves and their country. Now, joining me to discuss his legacy is Natalia Brandler, a Latin American specialist based here in Paris. Sarai Suarez, a Venezuelan journalist from London. Francisco Dominguez, a Latin American specialist from Middlesex University. And from Barcelona, Mark Weisbrot, an American economist who's been closely following Chavez's career. But first, let's take a look at this report by Nicolas Germain.
These are some of the last photos taken of Hugo Chavez. He's seen here with his daughters in Cuba just before he returned to Venezuela in February. Chavez had been in Havana to undergo another cancer treatment. Prior to his fourth operation, the leftist leader had announced for the first time his chosen successor.
If the situation requires it, respectful to the Constitution, there will be new elections, and you should elect Nicolas Maduro as president of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela.
Chavez, a former paratrooper, first came to prominence in 1992 when he led a failed coup against then-President Carlos Perez.
Regrettably for now, we did not achieve our stated objectives. Now's the time to avoid more bloodshed.
Chavez spent 2 years in prison before being pardoned. Whilst the revolt failed, it did help launch his political career. Just a few years later, he swept to the presidency.
I swear in the name of my people, on this moribund constitution, I will drive the democratic transformations necessary so that the new republic has a constitution appropriate for today.
He soon introduced that promised new constitution, which greatly expanded social protection for citizens. He also used the country's vast oil wealth to finance social programs. But his opponents accused him of taking an increasingly autocratic style. In 2002, Venezuelan opposition tried to overthrow him by force, but failed. Chavez accused the United States of orchestrating the attempted coup. His presidency was a time of strained relations between Caracas and Washington, who especially disliked his alliances with Cuba and Iran. But he remained popular at home and was easily re-elected in 2006. In 2009, he won a referendum giving him the green light to seek a fourth mandate. But then, in June 2011, Chavez announced that he had been diagnosed with cancer. The Venezuelan leader underwent several operations and bouts of chemotherapy before being given the all-clear. A few months later, having just won a fresh term as president, the disease returned. He was 58 years old when he died. Many now wonder whether his Bolivarian revolution will persist without its founder.
Nicolas Germain with that report. Natalia, let me start with you. Was Chavez a tyrant or a saviour?
He was a charismatic leader, and no doubt that he was a demagogue, but he was also a leader who was able to have a very strong leadership in many countries of the world, especially within the left countries. And he was also a very authoritarian leader. And as a charismatic leader, he's, as Weber says, irreplaceable. He's not, I don't think the followers will be able to have the same charisma, the same, charm he had for half of the population. For the other half, he was not a charismatic leader, but a tyrant.
He was a divisive figure, wasn't he, Sarai?
He was a cocktail man. He was a cocktail composed of all the elements that we just listened. And there is something very important to understand about Venezuelan people, is that Venezuelans are like Chavez. They sing, they dance in any situation, even in the worst, in front of the worst catastrophe. They're going to dance, they're going to laugh. So Chavez was a perfect example of what's Venezuelan ideology or way of being.
But as a Venezuelan, how do you feel about his death? Are you relieved? Are you bidding him a fond farewell?
It's a complicated situation because I think, especially in what's going to happen now that he's not there. He's been in power for 14 years, which is quite a lot of time. And now we are facing a situation where we had one leader, we had one image of power, and there is nothing behind. He recently said, before leaving to Havana in December, that Nicolás Maduro was going to be the person to vote for in the case of a new election. But it's the first time he gives the power to someone else in his team. Before that, he used to say that the revolution, I am the revolution. The revolution belongs to me, I am the revolution, and without me, there is nothing.
Mark Weisbrot, I want to ask you, how do you view Hugo Chavez? Was he a saviour of the people, or was he a tyrant? I'm sorry, I think we're having a few technical problems there. Let me just talk to you, Natalia. I mean, let's talk about what he did do. He set up state-run stores selling subsidised food. He established clinics in poor areas. He nationalised dozens of foreign-owned assets. I mean, it wasn't for nothing that he won the support of Don't Haves.
Well, with a average of a barrel of oil at $100 is the least thing he could do. I mean, we had an income, that was like never before. So he put in place all these missions, 30 missions in all. He promised food. He gave food for very low price. He promised housing. So it's true. And he was charismatic, and he was, in a way, as you were saying, he was a leader that was able to relate to people. But on the other hand, we have many other things. He was authoritarian. He had a disrespect for the rule of law. Human rights were violated, and he didn't accept easily opinions that would be contrary to his.
Francisco in London, do you think that Washington is relieved that Chavez is dead?
It's difficult to judge, I imagine, given the hostility of Washington and the various administrations, and particularly the State Department, the National Endowment for Democracy, and other institutions. Hostility towards Chavez, I imagine they are rejoicing. My worry is this, that sections of this establishment, possibly deeply inside the government and institutions of the U.S., many of them are possibly thinking that this offers them a window of opportunity for them to try something silly. They have tried this before. They did try in 2002. The information and the evidence that the classified information shows that they were deeply involved in the coup, and they were also involved in various other destabilizations, such as the oil lockout. I just hope that, given the new context in Latin America, that these sections of the US and also sections of the opposition in Venezuela do not think that this is a moment to strike. The situation, however, in the country is very stable, very calm, and one has to see that and appreciate that the very fact that the collective leadership was in charge, more or less, much more collectively than ever, from the 8th of October when he went back to Cuba to get treatment. And they were able to perform the extraordinary feat of winning the elections of the 16th of December, both for the governorships, 20 out of 23, and for the local legislature, which was 22 out of 23. So in that sense, it seems to me that the United States may want to think very carefully about this. I hope they don't do something which is unacceptable.
Francisco, he did succeed, however, in curbing American influence in that part of the world, didn't he?
If you look at all the processes that have taken place in Latin America, the United States' influence is massively waned. There is the Commonwealth of Latin American and Caribbean States, which is a massive organization, and it's a founding document. It says that it excludes specifically the United States and Canada. You have UNASUR, which has been central and instrumental in stopping, for example, the secessionist attempts to break up Bolivia in 2002. And the UNASUR also has its own electoral commission that went to Venezuela in the last election and showed that the elections were free and fair. The process of peace in Colombia, again, the United States is a mere spectator, whatever else they may try to do. And in terms of trade, the United States had declines in the 1970s by more than 25%. And Latin America is orienting itself towards somewhere else. Many of the multinational companies that became the owners of many of the utilities and companies that were privatized during the wave of privatizations have been renationalized, and Washington has been pretty incapable of doing much except destabilization, which is what they do regularly. And it seems to me that if you take all of that into account, there is more, but I would just mention the fact that many of the military bases of the United States are being closed down, and more will be closed down in the near future. Anybody that has that view, anybody that looks at that landscape can only conclude that Washington's influence has massively declined. People say, if I may finish with this, that there was the Washington consensus, and what is emerging now is a consensus without Washington.
Francisco was just talking there about the fact that Washington should be careful in what it does during this period of time, Natalia, that in terms of stability at the moment the country is stable, but no doubt, given the political void that seems to be in existence, things could change. Well, what is your opinion about that?
Well, the truth is we're living right now in a permanent state of emergency, or, with no rule of law, because the situation right now is not legal. I mean, who should be in power is right now the president of the National Assembly, because that's what the Constitution says. So it is, in fact, a situation that is not exactly stable. Also, there are fractions, there are fractions within power. We just saw Maduro announcing the country that the president had deceased, and there was not, Cabello was not with him.
Because it looks like there is a party division.
There is a division. I mean, they have, it's in their own interest to look united and, of course, to remain united. But we know there are fractions within
Sarai, was Chavez a disaster for Venezuela?
He was a man, and his government is still plenty of contradictions. They say one thing, and they do the opposite. They say that they're going to respect the Constitution, and they do exactly the opposite that the Constitution dictates. So this contradiction permanently in the government is obviously has consequences in the country. They talk about the security, and there is 70 persons, 70 deaths on 100,000. The rate of death in Venezuela is huge. So there is always these contradictions, and obviously this becomes a chaotic government.
But what do you feel about the man?
I feel it's not easy to have a country that just lose his president and now is facing this electoral situation.
Well, did you support
plenty
him?
of confusion? No, I was not a supportive of President Chavez.
Why was that?
Because I didn't really agree on the politics of these contradictions of this. Obviously, I agree with the distribution of the oil incomes and all these policies, but not the way they were doing. I think mainly most of these mission programs were most makeup and not really solving the problems in a deep way.
Yes, I would like to say something very quickly because it relates to what you just said. How do we feel? I mean, how would you feel in a country where the Ministry of Defense just said yesterday that the whole armed forces are ready to support Maduro because he has to be the next president. They have to follow the revolution. Last year, the past Minister of Defense said that he rejected the principle of separation of powers, as did the justices, and that they would support they would only support the Chavez president project. So there's no separation of power. It's an authoritarian that has used elections to remain in power. There's a huge hypocrisy in terms of of freedom. They speak that this is a freedom country, but at the same time, they have imprisoned people without trial for years. And, there's all these things have a very strong emotions for many people because they say, yes, we do agree with justice and empowerment of people and a discourse of equality for everybody. We agree.
But at what price?
But
exactly?
at what price? Yes.
Francisco was talking about the Consejo Nacional Electoral, the electoral council of the country, the institution that organizes elections. The direction of this institution is composed by 4 persons who work for the government and 1 person representing the opposition. How can an institution like that guarantee equality in an electoral process?
Soraya, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there because it's time to take a break. But do stay with us for the second part of the Franz van Kat debate.
Seamos un tilín mejores y un poco menos egoístas. Saludos. Muchas gracias, presidente.